Dogmeat, Lydia, Forks. Companions have always been a memorable part of Bethesda games. And now Bethesda are insisting that Vasco will be one of the most popular companions when it comes to Starfield. The robot's design is certainly interesting. Although he is primarily an assistant, he does have some defensive capabilities. The latest video clip then on the game is very much following the studio's recent trend, and that trend is one of releasing very small pieces of information. Clearly, Bethesda are attempting to fan the flames of the hype machine, and to some degree it does certainly seem to be working. Although at this point I do wonder just how cautious they are with this particular approach. At any rate, gameplay, when are we going to see some? Well, if I were going to speculate, I'd be willing to bet early to midsummer, and that would give Bethesda a few months lead in to the overall game's release. Now, one thing that we can see is that the studio are certainly content to keep showing clips from the original cinematic trailer. And although this is perhaps getting a little bit old at this point, there's perhaps a valid reason for this. And the fact that Vasco himself did appear in this original trailer goes a long way to confirm people's suspicions that cinematic trailer contained a lot of hints towards the game's overall content. Elsewhere, in news related to Starfield, Bethesda have interviewed the game's lead designer and writer. Now, unfortunately, in the interview there was very little to be revealed as to the game's direction. However, the gaming press have been very quick to pick up on one particular quote, which is effectively the lead designer saying that the game is going to make people lose their minds. Hopefully he means that in the good way rather than in the bad way. And yeah, I'm sure he does mean it in the good way. One thing that the gaming press didn't pick up on, which I personally found a good quote, is the guy's advice about becoming a game developer. In particular, he says this: everyone is largely working from home because of COVID. NFTs are starting to be introduced. Some gamers are starting to experience franchise fatigue. But the advice I would give is for everyone to ignore that. We're in a weird bubble right now. You need to focus on the most important thing, and the most important thing is, do you love games enough to want to commit your life to making them? So yeah, the part that really stood out to me there was the stuff about NFTs and franchise fatigue. And yes, I kind of agree, that does seem to be a bit of a bubble right now. Studios, publishers like Ubisoft are still definitely pushing with the NFT idea, although gamers seem to be reacting to the concept very, very poorly, and rightly so. Franchise fatigue is definitely there. Just look at the poor sounds of the recent Battlefield game, of course, not helped by its disastrous launch. And honestly, franchise fatigue is not just limited to games, but also pretty much everything else out there as well. Just look at Star Trek and Star Wars, for example. You can't turn the corner without seeing more of that. All this really does come back to Starfield, doesn't it? It seems to be the right time to try and create a new IP. That new IP was revealed for the first time at E3 in 2018, so very nearly 4 years ago at this point. Now, despite the relative lack of official information and visuals about the game, that hasn't stopped leaks from taking place. In fact, very recently some new leaks have emerged, these still from a build dated from 2018. Now, I'd like to speculate on these, but they reveal very, very little. But there's just enough here to get the impression that Starfield will very likely have a section or a segment of the game about building, following on from the mechanics introduced in Fallout 4. Whilst not everyone was impressed with what was done with building in Fallout 4, this has been somewhat improved with Fallout 76. And yes, I dare mention that game is actually not that bad nowadays. After the rough launch, Bethesda have improved it quite substantially. Ultimately then, at this point in time, the thing that really does make me wonder and gives me the greatest cause of perhaps potential concern is the lack of information as to whether or not players will be able to actually fly ships. Of course, the cinematic trailer very much gives that impression. But like I say, at this point, it's somewhat concerning to me that nothing has, even been said about it, let alone shown. From that point of view then, I can completely understand why some people feel that spaceflight in Starfield will work somewhat similar to Outer Worlds, basically a loading screen between planets. Personally, I really hope that's not the case, and the impression I'm getting from Starfield is that it won't be the case and that there will be some physical flight there, but time will tell on that front. At any rate, that brings us to an end of this video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.